Okay, hello and welcome to another video. Okay, I had some requests for a small review of a few different topics last week, so I thought what I would do is to try and consolidate a bunch of topics into one video. So sorry, it'll be a little bit disjointed, but I'll see if one video gets long enough, then I'll break it into some other pieces with different topics in it. Okay, but anyway, let's get started. Okay, so one of the things I wanted to do was to start off by doing up a small class because this will be something useful. So we'll actually write this entire thing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create this class called a computer product. So you can imagine this is like some kind of an online sales type application where you're going to sell a bunch of computer products, or you're going to have a table full of information about some computer products. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to create a constructor for my computer product, and I'm going to put in three parameters, one called a type, one called a description, and one thing called a price. Okay, and what we're going to do is we're going to say this type is equal to the parameter type, this description is equal to the parameter called description, and this price is equal to the parameter price. All right, and down here, let's just create one little test thing. We'll let C be equal some computer product, and we'll say new computer product. So first of all is the type. So maybe we've got like a CPU type, maybe we have an i7, and maybe we have some price like 3000 QAR. Okay, and finally just console.log C. Okay, and that's going to be good enough to get us started. Okay, so first of all, this will make them over here and make sure this is working. I can see if I can make the size a little bit bigger. Okay, so that's fine. So we've got ourselves a computer product with a couple of parameters. Okay, so now let's get back to Visual Studio Code, where we can start making some stuff. Okay, so one of the questions that did pop up, and I thought I may as well take a few minutes to talk about it, is a person did ask saying, well, okay, this is one way how we can make this particular class. Inside the constructor, we can simply say this type, this description, this price. And one of the questions that was challenged to me was, what's the difference between, say, putting a name here versus just putting the values right down here? Okay, well, here, just for fun, let's put the word type and description up here, and let me list this dot type, this dot description, and this dot price down here in the constructor, and let me take a look and see what happens. Okay, all right, see any difference? Of course you won't see any difference. There's absolutely no difference. Okay, so what's the difference between putting these things up here? Okay, well, let me go and put an extra value up here called other, an extra attribute. Notice here inside the constructor that I'm not actually setting this to be anything. So of course, if you don't set it to be something, it will be the value undefined. And if we load this thing up here, you'll see that it does appear as an actual attribute within my object, okay, within the class, even though we haven't actually set it to something. So it's listing the values up here can be useful if you know that you're not going to be setting them inside the constructor. This way, at least you know for sure that you have certain properties. Okay, so of course we probably don't want this, but we likely want the thing called price. Okay, so again, any big difference between leaving this out or not leaving this out? Not really. And as far as this course is concerned, yeah, you could probably leave this out and absolutely nothing would happen. Okay, I won't even take any marks for it, unless I said to actually do it. But you probably won't find any difference in the actual object that was created. This is more of a convenience, and I really encourage you to do it, because if I open up this file and I look inside this computer product, I can see that this computer product has three attributes, and they're listed right here. I don't need to go digging down through the constructor or perhaps into other functions much further down throughout the rest of the program. Because remember, this class could be several thousand lines long. Okay, so this is more of a convenience thing. In fact, going along the same line, it might be very, very handy to do something like this as well. Like, for example, suppose I wanted to be able to change the description and I wanted to set it equal to an I9 because now we've done some kind of upgrade. Now, what you should be doing, you should be yelling at me saying, hey, you just made a mistake. And of course, yes, that's exactly what I did, because now you'll see that I have this thing called DESC, and I also have a new field called description. And this is a bit of a problem or limitation of JavaScript, is it does allow you to go and add attributes at any time that you want to. And one of the things that I really recommend that you do when you're building up classes for use by other people is to use that thing called object.seal and actually seal this object. So the result is later, if somebody tries to add a new property, at least you end up throwing an exception and everything gets halted, which is a better option than simply everything continuing on but things just not working correctly. And of course this happens all the time because, I mean, did we spell it first name like that? Did we spell it like this? Did we spell it like this? Did we spell it like this? This object.seal is really just helping you. Okay, and I know I've made this joke in my section before. A lot of the things that we do inside object-oriented programming, like inside these things called classes, usually what we're doing is we're protecting ourselves from somebody else. And who are we protecting it from? Well, basically, it's a case that you never trust other programmers. Okay. In fact, I used a bunch of these techniques during last week's lab to protect you, the students, from making certain types of mistakes. And this was one of the things that I did, was I sealed the objects so that people couldn't accidentally or on purpose add extra parameters. Okay. All right. So that's all that this is doing. So whether or not you put these things here or not, that's completely irrelevant. Okay, but I'm about to make a few changes to this, okay, and then I'm going to put it into context of something else. Now, one of the things that may end up happening, for example, right now there's absolutely nothing from allowing me or preventing me from saying that the price is now nothing. And of course, well, that shouldn't be allowed. But of course, if I come back here and I reload the page, well, yeah, now it says the price is nothing, but that doesn't make any sense. But right now, there's nothing preventing me, the outside programmer. So remember, this is usually done by one programmer. The rest of the code is probably done by another programmer, or at least you at a different time. And what you want to do is you want to prevent you or the other person from making mistakes, either maliciously or unintentionally. Okay, for example, like this, okay, or maybe even worse, maybe free. Okay, and we want to prevent this type of thing from happening. So how can we go about making sure that people don't have access to the price to be able to make modifications? Well, one of the things that I did show you some time back was that you can put a hashtag in front of the name of the attribute. And what this does is this makes this particular attribute private. Okay, so here it is right here. It makes this private. So now, if I come down to here and I try reloading this, it says, well, you cannot add a property price because the object's not extensible. Well, that's because there's no property called price. There's something called hashtag price, but nothing called price. And if you stick a hashtag in front of it and come over here and try reloading the file again, you'll see here that now the private field price must be declared in an enclosing class. And what this means is that you simply don't have access to the price. So what I've been able to do now is I've been able to lock down this object so that nobody can modify the price. I could still make changes to the description, that's no problem. Okay, here, let's use some letters. I can still change this, but there's no way that I can change the actual value of the price. Okay, because I've made it a private. Again, why would you want to do this? Well, if you don't trust the other programmers from messing things up. If you remember in the credit card processing exercise from last week, I had a variable that I called _cc list, which was the actual list of credit card numbers. Guess what? That I actually didn't want to make public at all. That's the reason why I used the underscore. Why didn't I use a hashtag instead? The only reason why I didn't use a hashtag is because, unfortunately, unless you've got the right packages installed in Visual Studio Code, this actually shows up as an error, and I didn't want you to have to go through and get the see either the red lines for the errors or have to go through and install that extra package. So what I did was I stuck an underscore, and of course the underscore doesn't prevent you from doing it. It simply reminds you that you shouldn't be using it. Okay, so that's all it is. It's simply a reminder that you shouldn't be using it. Okay, so, but you can see here that I can change the description, but I can't change the price. In other words, I want to make sure that somebody can't get in here and mess with the price, but so far it looks like the description is wide open. And you know what? I could probably do other things, like I could lock down the type as well, and it simply would mean coming into here. Okay, and of course I can still do this. So now me as the outside programmer down here. Okay, so here I'll even say this is the other programmer. Okay, and let me call this me. And of course, you might actually be the other programmer. But you see, now the other programmer doesn't have access to either the type or the price to be able to either change it, or, well, unfortunately, here's the problem, is you also can't just get it either. Okay, so this is a bit of a problem and you can't access this because, well, it happens to be private. Okay, so we'll get back to that in a second. Before I go on, however, I want to point a couple things out. So one of the reasons why I like putting these attributes at the top is so that you can look at the class and you can see exactly what it is that you have inside. Okay, that's one of the reasons. The other reason is this is actually very, very close to a lot of other programming languages. And what I thought I would do is I would pop open 2 programming languages. So don't worry, this is not part of the course, but eventually you will end up seeing these other languages. Okay, so the first language you'll bump into in your next course is Java. Okay, so take a look at this. This is actually a class within Java. You can see a couple of new things. Some things are actually not that much different. For example, this thing right here, this is actually a constructor. How do I know it's a constructor? It has the same name as a class. Okay, so they don't use the word constructor, they use the name of the class. Okay, the parameters are being passed in. I have the types because it is a required, but you can still see this dot type is equal to the parameter type, this dot name is the parameter name, this dot price is the parameter price. And take a look here, price is actually being marked as private. This name is being marked as private, type is being marked as private. If I wanted to make this public, I would use the word public. You have to spell the word public correctly. Okay, so that's actually pretty close to what I just did a few minutes ago over in JavaScript. Okay, so again, this is not part of this course, but to give you an idea, in Java, you actually do need to list all of your attributes inside the class scope so that you can specify the types. That's a requirement. Okay, put that away, pop over to here, because I know some of you are taking PHP. Yes, PHP also contains the concept of a class. Okay, and here happens to be a class definition inside PHP, and you can see here that I've actually put in the word private. I guess what I could do is, well, we'll match up the other one. So this happens to be a couple of things that are private, and one thing that is public, same thing. And you'll notice that the word this is still here. The only difference is you use these arrow operators rather than a dot operator to select the actual attribute. Okay, so that's one of the reasons why it is helpful to be able to put these things at the top. So number one, so that you can see all the attributes at once. Second thing is it really is what ends up being used in a lot of other programming languages. C# is similar. Okay, so it's just to be consistent between your languages. So again, if you leave these out from here, yes, everything will be fine. Now, the only thing that's a bit of a surprise is, well, let's try leaving this one out for a second, and let me just console.log C. Okay, so, okay, see any problems with this? Doesn't look like it, but if we come over here to my browser and I try loading the page, you'll see right here that this private field price must be declared in an enclosing class. Okay, and I'm not using it here. It's now this one right here. And the problem is that if you want to use these private attributes, you have absolutely no choice, but you have to go and actually declare them as an attribute. So this is the time where you absolutely must do it. But I would say just get used to it and put them all in the same spot. Okay, so there we go. Here's our problem solved. Okay, so good. That's the first few things. Now, the real question that was being asked. Okay, so right now we've got this problem where we have this object called C, and we know that it's got a type, it's got a description, and it's got a price, and I've made the price private, which means that I cannot take the price and actually put it somewhere. Well, where would I want to put it? Well, you can imagine maybe what you want to do is to have the price is, and we'll make up a span ID, we'll call it price, and you want to put in the price of that actual CPU. Okay, so how would we do that? Well, normally what we'd end up doing is you say well, let's actually get the price first. So we'll get the price, and we'll say C's hashtag price, and we want to say document.get element by ID. Now, what did I call that? I call that just price, so that's the HTML element, and that would be an inner text. Okay, more on that a little bit later. It could be equal to price. Now, let's first of all make everything public. Okay, so no problems right here. Okay, so everything is public. I should have access to this. And of course, if I come over here and I load the page, it says here that the price is 3,000. Okay, but now what happens if I'm trying to lock this down so that nobody can make changes to this price, because maybe I want to make sure people don't put in wrong prices? Okay, what do I mean by a wrong price? Well, I guess if somebody wanted to change the price, see hashtag price is equal to 0 or -5 or anything else free. We want to prevent people from doing this type of thing, and of course, well, I can't do this right now because the price happens to be private. So how do we go about getting the price? Okay, here's what we can do. The usual way inside most object-oriented programming languages is you need to write a function that looks like this, get price. And usually what it would end up doing is it would return exactly the price. Okay, and of course I can do this inside here because I'm inside the class right now, so I do have access to this hashtag price. But rather than asking for C's hashtag price, I can say, please get me the price from the object called C, put it into the variable called, you know what, I've got too many things here called price, put it into the variable called P, and then take that and put it inside the price element. Okay. All right, so here we go. This would end up looking after being able to gain access to the price. In fact, what this is called an accessor. Okay, so in the world of object-oriented programming, is known as an accessor. And what it does is it gives you access to the value of something. Okay, now, some of the other things I may go on, well, what if I really do want to be able to change the price? I mean, eventually the system administrator has to be able to do things like changing the price. So how come we can't, say, set the price equal to something? Because, well, maybe we want to provide a discount because maybe it's on sale this week, and we want to be able to change the price to 2,500. Well, first of all, it's not called price, so that's no good. I can't use hashtag price because, well, that makes it a private attribute. So maybe what I need to do is to have a function called setPrice, and what I'll do is I'll have this thing here called NP. And what I can do is I can say that this price is equal to NP. And what I would end up doing down here, if I was the administrator and I want to change this price, part of my code, logged in as the administrator, of course, is you might say, well, set the price equal to 2,500. Okay, so let's give this a try. So this actually changes the value. It still says 3,000 here because I think I console.logged it before I console.logged it before actually changing the price, so that makes sense. I think what we'll do is we'll move the console.log down here at the end so we can see it. Okay, but now, any problem with setting it to free? Well, I mean, it does say that the price is free, but you know what? This is going to cause me no end of grief later when I try to maybe calculate a total, because what happens if you buy 5 of them and are free? What is 5 times free? Well, it might not be exactly what you want it to be, or it may end up giving you some other problems. So really, we've got a couple of things in here. Number one, the price should never not be a number. Okay, so is there any way how we can prevent this type of thing? Okay, well, I'm hoping that in your CR1501 you bumped into something called isNaN. That might be something useful. Okay, so that could be handy. But if you remember, there was also something called typeof. Okay, well, typeof. So what we could do If the type off is not, I believe it's called just number, let's just stick in a console.log here and say, oops, or, oh, hang on, I know exactly what somebody wants. Okay, so no mention about who that is, but we will say this word right here. Okay, now let's try reloading it, and of course, yes, we've actually triggered a bit of a problem. So what do we do? Okay, so if this number happens, or if NP is not a number, obviously we don't want to just do a console.log. We probably want to do a couple of other things. Now, here's one option. Simply get out of here. So if somebody tries changing the price to something that's not a number, in this case, it's completely ignored. Okay, with the console.log. If you want to do something a little bit more forceful, well, you could throw a brand new error. Okay, so this would be throwing an exception. That is not a number. Okay. All right, and of course what happens this time is somebody would have to be ready to be able to catch this type of thing. Okay, and of course, well, where do we put the try and catch? Well, you know what, this is not part of what this is today, but you know what, I'm going to cover it anyway. Okay, so remember, the way how this would normally end up working is you would probably not have a try and a catch and a throw all in the same function. Okay, catch E, so this is the actual error. Okay, an error with 3 R's is fine, console.log. That was a problem. Okay, so that's an on-caught. That is, if I not save this, okay, throw, return, that should have got that. Maybe I didn't have enough stuff here. On-caught, that is not a number. Oh, come on, did I actually... Okay. That was a problem, but I didn't want that on-caught exception. I actually wanted this to actually say it was a problem. And you notice it's ended up in here. Okay, it's definitely... There we go. Okay, well, it's embarrassing. Okay, right here. Oh, oh, look at this. I put the try, of course, around the get price, not around the set price. Oh, okay. All right, well, fine enough. Obviously, if you put your tries around the wrong place, you're going to have exactly the same problems. In fact, you know what? I'm going to put this entire thing inside here. Okay, so let's just do the entire thing. Now, how much of this you put inside your try depends on how it is that you want how you want this to work. Now, of course, the question is why does it end up here? Well, it probably ended up not being hard-coded by a programmer, but it was probably read from some kind of a text input, and perhaps you would like to ask the user to try again or to pop up a message. Okay, now, of course, I got all kinds of breakpoints in here. Let me finish this. All right, and take a look. Okay, there we go. So that was a problem. So at least we managed to stop everything, and of course, it never did do the output because, well, this part was stopped. So remember, the flow would have been, I would have created the object, I would have tried to set the price, but it threw an exception, and because an exception was thrown here, this was skipped, and this was skipped, and this third line was skipped, and the only thing that happened was this, followed by, of course, the rest of the program, but there wasn't anything. Okay, all right, good. So, hey, an extra thing for free. Okay, oh, by the way, since I was here, this was called an accessor. This has got a different name. This is called a mutator, and its purpose in life is to be able to change values of things. Okay, it's to be able to change the values of objects. Okay, so now this is fine. If this was a course in Java, then this is as far as I would end up going. But because this is JavaScript, there is sort of this extra feature built in called setters and getters that are actually part of the language. And they've got kind of this interesting thing because although this works fine, C get price, perhaps it might look a little bit nicer if it said C's.price. Okay, and of course, well, you can't do that because there is no there's actually no object called c's.price there. Let me get rid of setting the price first, or let's make it something reasonable. Okay, sorry, and I've got more breakpoints in here. Okay, so the price was changed, the price was undefined, and of course the price is undefined because C doesn't actually have a price. Okay, I've got a function called getPrice, but I don't have any attribute called price. There's something called hashtag price, but of course I can't access that. But what you can do is you can create something called price with the word get in front. Now notice, yeah, it looks pretty close to what that is. Okay, in fact, what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave them both in. So what this is an accessor called getPrice. Down here, this is a getter called price. And what did they both do? They both return the private attribute called price. Now, if I come over here and take a look, you'll see this is actually now working. Okay, so what's the difference? Well, this is a function. This is called a getter. Okay, it looks almost exactly the same, doesn't it? The only thing that's different is the way how you access it. This now looks like a variable versus the other one, which looks like a function. In fact, most of the time, you'd probably end up not having that get price, but you'd have a getter called price. But you could leave them both in if you want. Okay, now, likewise, guess what there's going to be? There is, oh, and by the way, what does this take as a parameter? Absolutely nothing. Okay, it takes absolutely nothing as a parameter because take a look at this. You don't do things like this. Okay, it's simply the name of the variable, so there is no parameter. Likewise, there's also a mutator built in, which is of type setter, and the way how you create one of these is something called set, and the way how it works is you take exactly one parameter and you say this. Oh, and by the way, you don't have to change just the price. Okay, and of course what I'm doing this time is I'm not worrying about the actual value. I'm just going ahead and I'm just modifying it. We'll fix that in a second. And the way how it works down here, instead of saying c.setPrice, you say c's price is equal to, we'll make it something different, we'll make it equal to 300. So this time, rather than calling the setPrice function, it's going to call my setter called price. Okay, and this should give me a value of 300. Okay, but of course we probably don't want to just allow people to go ahead and set these things directly. Instead, you probably want that same logic here. So let's copy and paste the entire logic. So at least now we are checking to see whether or not things happen to be the numbers. So again, no difference here. But if I try to set it equal to this word, you see now it's actually going to throw that exception just as it was before. So all that we've done with these setters and getters is we've replaced these functions, these mutator and accessor functions, with things that are just a little bit different to use. Are they more powerful? No. Are they faster? No. Do they look a little bit different? Sure they do. And maybe you like this style, or perhaps you like the c.setPrice. Both are completely fine. It's entirely up to you if you want to use a setter or getter, or if you want to use the accessor or mutator functions, unless of course I actually say please go and create one of these. The minute that I say that you have to go and create something, well then you have no choice, but you actually have to do it. So but if you're designing your own class and you can't decide between which one to use, well, it's entirely up to you. Okay, so it really is. Oh, and by the way, there's also absolutely no reason why you can only modify one particular thing. For example, let's do something really bizarre in here. I don't know why this is going to be, but there's nothing stopping me from saying this hashtag description blah blah blah. So now take a look at this. If somebody takes a price and they change it to a valid number, okay, the price has changed and you can see that the description is still the same, but if I try changing it to something which is not a number, oh well, it's actually disappeared now because I didn't have the console.log, but let me actually print out the value C. Oh, really, come on, just the value C. Okay, C is not defined. Oh, it's because it's inside here. Okay, sorry, I need to, because it threw the exception, it never got handled. So let me comment out my exception throwing just for a second so I can demonstrate. Okay, so notice what it's done. This time it isn't throwing the exception, but I've actually gone and modified the other thing. So you don't only have to modify just the one field, you actually have the ability to modify whatever it is that you want. Okay, all right. So what I am going to do is I'm going to stop this video here because that has to do with all of the class stuff, and I've got more class stuff coming up, but I've got a slightly different topic to cover next, and maybe it's a good time for us to take a break. Okay, so carry on with the next video in a few minutes.